This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Katherine Shen. Teachers have the summer to recoup and recharge ahead of the upcoming school year, but it's also a time to prepare, like creating lesson plans, setting up a new classroom, and restocking supplies. This coming school year, there's a new item on the to-do list, responding to immigration enforcement and how to help students who are processing a variety of emotions. The threat of immigration enforcement is affecting students and their families. Today, we hear how local educators are responding and finding ways to support children. Joining us now is Julie Sugarman. She's the Associate Director for K-12 Education Research at Migration Policy Institute's National Center on Immigrant Integration Policy. Julie, thank you so much for joining Where We Live.
Thank you for having me.
So there have been many reports across the country last school year of ICE agents entering schools. What has the past school year looked like for multilingual learners and also children of immigrant families?
It's been a really stressful year. A lot has been happening. Obviously, the most obvious and most visible thing is the issue with immigration enforcement, and it's looked different in different communities. So many communities have been dealing with a lot of ICE activity and a lot of families that are scared that don't want to leave their houses, and teachers are dealing with a lot. And then it's part of the rest of what's going on with education as well. So it's really been a very busy and stressful year.
Well, and like you mentioned, there are things that are happening beyond what we're just talking about, and everything has been so overwhelming and a lot of uncertainty. What are some of the mental health impacts you're seeing? Especially even if students might not be directly impacted, I imagine they're fearful, and living with this fear must be taking a toll.
That's such an important point because it isn't just the unauthorized kids. It's the kids who live in mixed status families where they have maybe an unauthorized parent or friend or relative, and then it's all of the community. It's all the friends and the teachers, and everyone is living with uncertainty and are worried about their friends. And small children especially don't really understand what's going on, but see their friends are scared and are scared for them. So it's been a very difficult time and something that teachers have had to figure out how to negotiate in the classroom and talk about what are the real things that are going on. And folks say, "Oh, this is too scary," but it's their lived reality. So teachers really do have to address the stress that kids are feeling and try to make them feel safe at school, which is the most important thing, so that they can come and learn and develop their academic achievement and their language.
So we're definitely going to talk more about that throughout the hour, but I'm curious to hear from your perspective, what has those conversations been like? Because I'm also imagining kids and families are processing what's going on. Teachers are also processing what's going on. How are those conversations being held when everyone, I think, are trying to collectively unpack what's happening?
Absolutely. And I know teachers have a real struggle to not engage in a lot of the political discussion, which of course is really at the heart of it, but they just want to sort of explain what's going on, that some folks don't. At MPI, we use the term unauthorized because it refers to the fact that people, it's not just sort of not having a document, it's that they are here without authorization or a particular status. So that some people don't think that those people should be here. But, all of I do this for a living, and it's very difficult for me to keep track of all of the statuses and the executive orders about different groups and all that. So I think for teachers, I think they just try to keep it simple and explain that some people don't have the right to be here through in terms of the legal system, and so they're being taken sent back to where they came from. I think is probably the way that they would put it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many other layers to it, and the political layers and the emotional layers.
Well, and so much has changed over the last couple of months. And what does the law currently say about immigration enforcement and access to school grounds? Could arrests take place in schools?
So there used to be something called the sensitive locations policy, and that was rescinded at the beginning of the Trump administration. It was in place in the first Trump administration, but eliminated now. And it used to be that ICE had a policy, not a law, but a policy to not engage in any enforcement around schools, in schools, bus stops, anything like that. But that does not exist anymore. But we still have the Fourth Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment is our right to privacy. And so just like you have the right to privacy in your house, the private areas of a school are also a place where people would expect privacy. And so law enforcement does have to have a judicial warrant, so a warrant signed by a judge, in order to enter those private areas. And schools are also able to create policies for what happens if ICE would come to the door. We have not heard of anything, really dramatic happening. ICE has perhaps come into schools to inquire about something, and there are processes, and they go through the processes of answering the question or not answering the question. I think they realize that it would be, I think they're getting a lot of backlash from doing things near schools, in parking lots and near schools. But I think they realize that it would not be wise for them to do any actions in schools. And we haven't really heard of any problems that are happening in the private areas of schools.
Well, and building on what you just shared, last year, the Department of Homeland Security issued a statement saying ICE is not conducting enforcement operations at or raiding schools. ICE is not going to schools to make arrests of children. The facts are DHS's directive allowing ICE to go to schools gives our law enforcement the ability to do their jobs. Our agents use discretion. Can you respond to that statement? What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, that is all lawful, that they are allowed to come to schools with a warrant and like any law enforcement, can interact in those spaces. But I think they do need to understand that we need schools to be a safe place so that students can come there and so families can come there. And we know how important family engagement is. So even if the students are able to get to school, if the parents aren't able to come and ask questions and see what's going on, that's a really big problem. So the fact that they have been doing things lawfully under their own policy around schools is really a problem. And many schools are trying to account for that and protect the schools as best they can. But it really has created a lot of disruptions to students' education and to their socialization.
Well, and beyond the idea that school campuses are considered sensitive locations, so beyond the idea of policy, school grounds are considered safe places for a lot of students anyway. So how is this fear impacting school attendance for students, especially students from immigrant families?
We have been seeing reports. We don't have national data yet because it takes a while for that to accumulate. But we have definitely been seeing reports that attendance is down. There is research that's been done over the last 10 years that shows that when raids happen in the community, so not even something happening in the school, but in the community, that attendance goes way down for a brief period of time. But then that also extends. That there's a spike of absenteeism, but then that absenteeism is high for a long time after that, especially among unauthorized kids and kids in mixed status families. So, we will eventually be able to quantify it and have national statistics, but many schools have been reporting this, have been talking about it.
And so can you describe to us how this is impacting different ages and grade levels? I imagine young kids in elementary school versus high school students could experience and are witnessing these moments very differently.
Absolutely. And the particular issues that they're having are different too. I mean, the traumatic experiences and the way that they deal with that. Obviously with the young kids, they're still teenagers are still developing too, but the young kids, we know there are ongoing lifelong issues that are associated with chronic stress. But things like attendance, which we just talked about, for young kids, they're dependent on their parents to get them to school or get them on the bus. And so if parents aren't able to do that, they may keep their their kids home, whereas older kids, typically would have a little bit more autonomy to be able to get themselves to school. But then with the older kids, they might have to, if parents aren't able to work, they might have to if go to work and have a job in order to support the family. Or if the parents are working, they may have to stay home with the young children if there's children who aren't going to school yet. So there's all kinds of issues for them. And, I would think also with older kids that they do understand the political context and they have a lot of more complicated feelings about what's going on. And it may be especially distracting for them.
Well, we're talking about school attendance and chronic absenteeism, but also this idea of learning in this environment. And for many of these students, English could be their second or even third language. So, what are your thoughts about having to learn a completely different language and often a completely different culture while under these social emotional stress?
I think that one of the issues is with if they're not coming to school, or if they're coming to school and not wanting to talk to other kids, they don't have an opportunity to just chat with native English speakers or with kids who speak English, and that's really how they develop language, is by having the conversations and socialization. So it's not just the time with a teacher that we are concerned about; it's their entire social life and their ability to trust and their ability to take chances. And all of those aspects are really important for language learning. So if they're feeling uncomfortable, they may not be speaking as much. And if they're not speaking as much, they may not have the language development in as efficiently or quickly as they would ordinarily.
Well, and with that sort of potential barriers for many students and from the teacher's perspective, how are educators responding to all of this? Students feeling fear, students not going to school, or students not being able to express how they're feeling?
I think teachers are very stressed about this. A lot of people in this field are in it for personal reasons. They were language learners, or they're immigrants who didn't learn their native language, and so want kids to have a better experience than they did. So it's not just that they are empathetic or sympathetic about these children that they like. This is a personal thing. They themselves have immigrant family or are undocumented themselves. So it's not just the sort of the thinking about the kids, it's their own life as well. So teachers have really been stepping up in amazing ways to provide supports, to find resources, to connect with parents, which is really incredibly important because the school itself may not have the capacity to for languages. Of course, that's required by law, but it's often the English specialist teacher who makes those connections and explains what's going on and explains, here's how the school is responding, and here's the laws and all that. And that all takes time and effort and emotional time, emotional effort as well.
And so, as you're saying, educators, teachers are really stepping up to meet this moment the best way they can. But I would imagine that some children are falling through the cracks.
I'm sure that's true, and especially children who are in families that don't want to be leaving the house. In a lot of communities, they've set up systems for parents who are comfortable coming to school to pick up other children, either walking or driving, and that's great. But if you're in a rural neighborhood, for example, and live far from other families, or you don't know other families, or it's just not a supportive community, I can see how it would be especially concerning and in places where they're not as used to working with these populations and don't have the infrastructure and don't have sort of the mental checklist of these are the things that we need to do to check on people and the ways that are effective for reaching out to families. If they don't have that history, definitely kids and families could be falling through the cracks.
You've been listening to Julie Sugarman, who is with the Migration Policy Institute's National Center on Immigrant Integration Policy. Coming up next, we hear from Connecticut educators working with students and their families. This is Where We Live. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we hear what local educators are doing to prepare for the possibility of immigration agents on campus and how they're working with students who may be affected. If you're a teacher, we would love to hear from you. Find us online at Where We Live. You can also email us at wherewelive@ctpublic.org or give us a call, 888-720-9677. Joining us now is Luanelly Iglesias. She's a bilingual teacher at Danbury Public Schools. Luanelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
Tell us about your work and what does your work look like as a bilingual educator and what your student population look like?
Well, I am a teacher at a middle school in Danbury, Connecticut. I have been working for the past 22 years. I have been working mostly with middle school students, and most of my students are immigrants. I am a ESL and also bilingual math teacher. And I love what I do. I am very passionate about my students, and I am very concerned about this issue with immigration because I can see on a daily basis how much has been affecting not only them, but also their families.
What are some of the changes you're seeing?
I have seen kids emotionally being affected, students that have been very stressful, parents that have been very concerned. In our district, for example, just this year, we probably lost about almost 700 students that we don't really know where they are. We don't know if they transferred to another district. We don't know if they are home. We have parents giving their parental rights to neighbors, to friends, because they are afraid that if they get caught, they will never be in contact with their children if they are deported to their families, and they are placed in foster care. I have seen students being affected by this issue because they come to the classroom, they are worried, they listen to the news, and they are afraid. We have counselors in our schools that we have them come, have conversations about it. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I share with them, even though I am a legal citizen because I was born in Puerto Rico. I myself, in the beginning, when all these things started, I started carrying my own passport because I was afraid that they might confuse me, that something happened, and carrying my ID, especially my passport that prove, that I am a citizen, was something that I myself started carrying with me. So it has been, it has been a very stressful year. I try to set time for my kids while we are learning just to talk about it. I also have an after-school program specifically for my multilingual language learners because I feel that because I can speak the language, they are more open and they feel more connected to speak and to share what's going on, especially during that space that we are not instructing, that we are not specifically learning something, during our lessons. So in my after school program, it has been a better opportunity for them to come to see, to socialize. And I can hear them when they talk to their partners, to their classmates, things that have been concerning them based on the background experience that they just had coming to this country. I do have to say that these are very hard worker families. These are people that I admire my students for being able to sit down in my classroom and being able to put their best effort to learn despite everything that is happening around them.
Well, and what you just shared sort of tie back to what we were talking about earlier, the importance of speaking the students' language, native language, while they are learning a new language and new culture. How have you seen your ability to be able to do that help them sort of balance what's been going on outside of the classroom, while at the same time they're going through a lot of traumatic events? How do you keep them focused and being able to stay in a classroom and continue to learn?
I think the key here is to develop relationship with our students. They know that I'm not only there to teach them, I am there to help them. And I tell them all the time, if you have a problem, if you are concerned about anything, if there's anything I can do to help you, I am here for you. Um, Having that connection with their family, I think, is so important, because understanding where they're coming from and what they went through. And this is why, to me, it is also important since the beginning of the school year to build up a relationship with their parents, and also to let the parents know that there are resources out there, that they are not alone. For example, in my middle school, we have a counselor, we have a psychologist, we have a social worker. We have a school health base for my students. Plus, before I became a teacher, I was a social worker for the Department of Children and Families. So I know that there are other resources in the community that we try to connect our families. We also have a meal program. So it is not just about the matter of education. It is about creating the support system, community system, so we can keep the balance, and at the same time I do not become overwhelmed, because I know that I also have resources that can help us, especially help these families in the middle of this, really stressful situation.
And so with the resources that you have available and being able to communicate to your students that this is a safe space for them to socialize and learn, how do you work to identify their emotional needs and some of the trauma that they might have gone through, while at the same time helping them recognize that, of course, education is not all, but it is important for them to continue to learn despite what's going on?
So the first question, I think, identifying. Like I said, to me, it is important to educate my children, but also as I develop my relationship with them, and I notice, like you can see in their behavior, sometimes they come to class, they cannot concentrate, and you see the pattern of their behavior. And when you notice something is different, something is, they're not doing well, they started doing really good, but all of a sudden everything is dropping. I think it is important to stop and have a conversation. Have a conversation, and of course, in a positive manner. I think that, again, the language here is the key. Taking time to talk to the student. For example, sometimes I have to do duty in the cafeteria, and trying to use every space that we can to try to communicate with the students is what helped me to identify something is going on, something is not the same, something is happening. And once you develop that relationship, they trust you, because it is true. One of the biggest issues is the trust. They are not from this country. They don't really know the system. They don't really understand it. They don't know who they can talk to. They don't know if that person is going to help them or is going to harm them. So developing that trust, it is important. It is important to help them and to also help their families, and to reinforcing, we are here to help you, to support you. We are here because we care about you, and we are here because we know you. You came to this country for a reason, and these are parents that work so hard, and sometimes they have, my kids, at that early stage of middle school, they have so many responsibility that it can become overwhelming, taking care of the younger children, the younger siblings, while parents are working so early in the morning, coming so late at nighttime. And absentees, that was mentioned before, has becoming an issue. And it is also a time to educate parents, because in their countries, sometimes the system is different and they don't understand it. So helping them understand, it is a law here. Kids have to come to school, and they have to, they have to come to school. They have to show up, and building that relationship is what really helps, parents and students to do better, to relieve the stress, and to be successful.
Luanelly Iglesias is a bilingual teacher at Danbury Public Schools, and I want to now introduce Carolyn Satin-Bajaj. She is the professor of education policy at the Department of Education at the Gavitt School of Education with the University of California, Santa Barbara. Carolyn, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, you've been listening to the conversation, and especially with what Luanelly just shared with us, it seems like students really just need a space to feel human and feel like they're valued and welcomed. I'm curious to hear what are some of the things that jumped out to you.
Yeah, I think all humans, and especially young people, and I talked to Luanelly a little bit before. Middle school is a particularly challenging but also rewarding time. It's so amazing that you've been there for so many years, and the students are really lucky to have you. So knowing that relationships are the foundation, we know research shows that kids can't learn if they don't feel connected, if they don't feel safe on a in the best of times, and we're not in the best of times for many young people, particularly of immigrant backgrounds. So that recognizing that, and Luanelly, I know how hard you must work. In some ways, you make it sound easy because it's second nature to you. But I think some of the things that I think about and see is that there are just hundreds of thousands of teachers who don't have the language, don't have the background and the awareness that Luanelly does. And doesn't mean they don't have the desire to find out how to connect with students and their families. But that's where I think that schools of education, professional development, like in addition to understanding, and I think Julie set the stage really well to understand that initially it was, wow, there's no more sensitive locations protections. ICE can and has come to the school building. And the fact that they can, even if it isn't that frequent. So the K-12 dive has been tracking, and maybe there were 17 incidents of ICE being found coming to school. But the specter of the potential totally reshapes how people feel about being at school. But that is just the like scratching the surface, and it's the day-to-day interactions. And on top of the political and not knowing what to say and worrying about what to say, educators aren't prepared to know what to do when a kid comes traumatized because a family member was detained or deported or they heard about ICE. And I get the daily updates on my phone about where ICE was spotted in my town, and I am a U.S. citizen, so it affects me. Imagine kids and families. So I think that that's sort of the next stage, is understanding what our educators need so that they can support students, and this relationship. When I came to California, I don't even know how many years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I was really surprised to find out that in my conversations with different school districts, what they wanted from an education researcher with expertise working with immigrant families was how to get more parent involvement. And that was from when I was in graduate school 20 years ago. Those were the same questions. So that continues to be a challenge for school districts. Layered on top of it, this whole new world of unprecedented threat and anxiety, the challenge of establishing those relationships and trust and showing that schools can be a safe space is even more real. So I think that those are the things I was thinking about. How do we continue to support educators so they can be like Luanelly and so that they can support kids and families?
Well, and it sounds like based on your experience, a lot of things have changed and a lot of things have stayed the same. And I imagine oftentimes it's because we have a lot more information exposure today versus then. So we're hearing a lot more about what's been happening. And you've been studying how immigration enforcement has affected students and education. So how does this current era of immigration enforcement compare to past eras?
In terms of the intensity, the visibility, and the removal of even minimum protections, it just feels much more intense. Again, thank you, Julie, for setting the stage so well. That we don't know empirically yet the effects of the past year or school year or year and a half since Trump took office again, and it really sort of intensified all of the approaches. But we can look at past evidence from Obama's administration, even in G.W. Bush, and Trump 1 to know that attendance decreases. There are different buckets. So we can look at what do we know about children of undocumented parents or likely undocumented parents, because it's very hard to identify, thankfully, for the protection of young people, who is undocumented and whose parents are undocumented. But we know that there are a lot of developmental, academic performance and outcome indicators that show that there are challenges, less likely to be enrolled in Head Start, less likely to access public benefits to which children might be entitled, higher rates of grade retention and school dropout and academic performance on tests associated with being a child of an undocumented immigrant. Then mental health and social emotional well-being indicators show that having parents in those vulnerable legal status and being undocumented yourself is associated with sort of worse outcomes on those measures. And then proximity to or frequency of ICE activity, like Julie said, it doesn't have to be at your school, in your community, associated with attendance drops, lower performance. And then even work that I've done in California that could draw on some surveys of young people themselves showed drops in sense of safety in school and social and emotional well-being. And because it's hard to pinpoint which students might be most directly affected, meaning who might have undocumented family members, we use proxies like students who are classified as emergent multilinguals or race ethnicity proxies. And those students, Latino students or EML students, tend to be more affected, but there is spillover effect to entire school communities. And I think it's really important. And I know multiple other folks here have talked about what it does to a community and the fear and the anxiety about your classmate. And I think I want to keep turning to I think about like put your life vest or oxygen mask on first. Educators are experiencing secondary trauma. If they are feeling that, then and aren't taken care of, then they can't take care of their students and their peers. So evidence just shows there's a great researcher who talks about community violence and immigration enforcement and the threat of it as an act of community violence, drawing on public health research on the consequences of that.
Luanelly, you want to jump in?
Yes. I just wanted to share two experiences that can actually confirm what she just mentioned. I have a student that was absent for almost about 3 weeks, and I was really worried about him. And I have our counselor contact the family. They were having trouble contacting the family. When the student came back to school, and I asked him, what happened? Why you didn't come to school? He explained to me that his mother got really sick. Mom has no paper. Mom was afraid to go to the hospital. Mom has no money because she couldn't even work. And he was telling me, and then mom confirmed that while she was so sick, he was the one that saved her life because he was the one who was taking care of her with the home remedies that they could find, that they could get. And he was really depressed. He was really sad. He was really worried, even when he came back, about his mom. And this is just one example of something that happened to this particular student. And I have another student who was participating in my after-school program, and she stopped coming. She didn't show up anymore. And when I asked her, hey, what happened, hon? Why are you not coming to the after-school program? You know it's free. You know that, we're here to, have a good time. We're here to support you. Because even in my after-school program, I can even provide tutoring. She told me, I saw when ICE took my father, and mom doesn't want me to come to no after-school program. She just want me to go from school to home. And it's so sad. It is so sad because even when school was ending, kids didn't want school to end because this is basically the only place that they can come, that they feel safe, that they didn't even want to go to the park to play. And, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Well, and Julie Sugarman, who is with the Migration Policy Institute, I want to get your thoughts here too, as we're talking about sort of can't really predict what's going to happen in the future, but sounds like there's a lot of fundamental changes that's happening now for both students and teachers. And I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts of some of the long-term impacts that we may see?
Everything is very unsettled. And as we alluded to really briefly, there are a lot of things happening in education and things with funding, for example, that schools are becoming really strapped. And as the Medicaid cuts take effect, states are going to be even more strapped and have to cut both health and education, which is really going to affect the communities that we're talking about. So all of the sort of focus biggest family effects that we're thinking about right now are going to really spiral outward, and with fewer teachers, perhaps if districts have to lay teachers off, fewer teachers to take care of kids, to watch out for problems, to advocate for the kids and families. It's really going to be even more stress on those who remain to try to provide those services, to try to make up the difference and really do right by these kids. Because again, it's not just a 9-to-5 job for these teachers. It's really their passion.
And Carolyn, before I go to break, I kind of want to pose the same question to you in terms of, as you mentioned, it's kind of hard to predict what the long-term impacts might be, considering we don't have sort of physical data quite yet. But what are your thoughts about how both students and teachers and families, of course, living through this era, how can it affect them, students specifically, in terms of how they continue their educational journeys?
Yeah, I think you're signaling like the aspirations question, the motivations question. There's lots of questions and research on, well, DACA is no longer, you can't apply for DACA. And that was a way to facilitate staying in higher education and working with really feeling like it's not safe to be here. What is my future? Or I got to go to work, or even if I am, the uncertainty of my family members, or will I have to move to a country that I don't even know whether I was born here or there? I think that can really shape aspirations. We already layered on top, the NAEP scores are not great for any kids. We're still suffering from the COVID disruptions to learning. So I think that there's a lot of complications, but I also am hopeful that this will be the second full school year under this new situation, however we want to describe it. And so teachers are demanding more support. Teachers are saying, I don't have what I need to do my job, basically to educate and to be there for students. And we're asking so much of them. So I'm really hopeful that school districts are coming a little bit more prepared, that maybe the back to school professional development will name some of the things that teachers need and are asking for.
You've been listening to Carolyn Satin-Bajaj, who's the professor of education policy at UCSB, Julie Sugarman, who's an associate director for K-12 education research for immigrant integration policy, and Luanelly Iglesias, who's a bilingual teacher at Danbury Public Schools. They will all be staying with us after a quick break. This is Where We Live. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. As immigration agents have been entering school campuses across the country, early research shows that many students are grappling with fear and anxiety when it comes to threats of ICE arrests. And this has already started to affect school performance and attendance. But educators are stepping up to the challenge and working to meet their students where they are. Still with us is Julie Sugarman, Luanelly Iglesias, and Carolyn Satin-Bajaj. So Luanelly, going into this new school year, I know we have a couple of weeks still, but how are you preparing?
Prior than ending school this year, we met with the team of teachers that we are going to be working, including the counselor, kind of like went over the students that we are going to get. And of course, during summertime, we most of the time get new students, not as much as we had in the past years. Actually, it was kind of like very shocking that this year we have to combine 3 levels of students, 6, 7, and 8, because we only got, at least in my class, probably less than 10 students as newcomers. When I say newcomers, these are students that are just got to the country. Which is the population of students that I'm going to be working with. And of course, I have students that have been probably almost a year, 2 years, but they still struggle with the English. So those students I also teach in my program. So the way that we prepare is basically, getting to know a little bit of their background, getting to know what other resources are out there, because we have nonprofit foundations that are in the area to support the families, identifying, for example, if parents have no food, if parents have no job, if parents have lost their job, where they can go to get resources. So we kind of have a plan. We have students that have no health insurance. So we have a school based in my school that provide all kind of or most kind of medical services for our students. And of course, we were planning prior than ending the school year, organizing some kind of like workshops to talk to parents about what are the resources that we have in our school, how the system work, how they can, who are the people that they can talk to, they can ask questions. We always try to identify trans people that can translate for them if they don't come to me. In my school, we are lucky enough that we have a secretary that is bilingual, but in other schools, it's not the same case. And always to reinforcing to them and letting them know we're here to help. We're here to provide, as many support as we can, and identifying those resources out there so that we can help them. I am also very actively involved in my union. And I just came from representing the teachers at the national level. And, we have a lot of conversations. I met with the National Hispanic Caucus, and we were identifying all these issues that we're having, not just at my local, but at the state, at the national level, and how we can get together to advocate and get and talk to our senators, talk to our legislator, our representative, and these community stakeholders that we have, so that we can all work together to help and support our families. Also identifying organizations in the community that we can collaborate, and so that we can talk to, so they understand that we can work together to support the best that we can our families and our students.
Well, and Julie, of course, as we just heard, lots of things that teachers are doing to try to meet the moment as the school year starts. Of course, prior to the semester actually starting. How are administrators preparing for this upcoming school year? Are you hearing about any protocols in place if immigration enforcement does come to campus?
There's a lot of districts that now have safe zone policies. These policies are not new ideas. They are just sort of a collection of the protections that students have. So, for example, the Supreme Court case Plyler versus Doe says that all students have to be admitted to school, be provided a free education, regardless of their immigration status. So these safe zone or protections, or, they have different names, talk about the different things that schools need to do when they're enrolling kids to make sure that they're accepting all kids, or talking about keeping their information safe. That's another one that's really important to make sure that families know what information can be shared and can't be shared. So I would think that this would be a good time of year for administrators to be refreshing those policies, to be reviewing them, not just with teachers, but with the front office staff. It's an incredibly important group of folks. They are the face of the school for the community and for the parents.
And Carolyn, today, of course, we're talking a lot about educators supporting students. How are students and parents supporting each other?
That's such a great question. And I think early on, Julie talked about at different ages, kids know different things. I just finished reading a really beautiful book by a professor, Mariana Manuel Figueroa, about young kids know and understand more than we give them credit for. So I think things happen really differently in different families, what the language is, what the awareness, whereas in prior administrations or eras, I think it might have been easier for kids not to really, especially early ages, to not know. I mean, we heard lots of stories. I lived in New York City hearing about a chess champion in high school who didn't know he was undocumented until he couldn't get to fly on a plane to an international competition. I think that's not the reality in the same way. So I'm hopeful that there are conversations and that are supportive. But this feels like an emergency. So I don't really know what it's looking like. I think I go always back to what I hear from educators. And in my school of education, there was a really powerful workshop held by developmental psychologists who gave pre-service teachers actual language to use, developmentally appropriate language to use for first graders to talk about immigration enforcement, and then how you talk about it to a fifth or sixth grader, and how you talk about it to a ninth or 10th grader. And I think that's the kind of thing I'm hoping, in addition to these policies on what to do to enroll students and not ask about them. And you're not allowed to ask about their legal immigration status, but also this level of, okay, let's equip educators with the next type of supports and resources and knowledge, because they can then facilitate maybe some of those conversations between parents and students as well.
Well, and this is a familiar place for you too, especially since you've been doing research about this for a while now. But I'm curious to hear, from past to present, do you feel like you're a changed educator or a changed researcher because of everything that's been going on today?
Oh, yeah, in so many ways. Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for the teachers who've opened up their classrooms and the school leaders who've let me spend a lot of time. And most recently, I have been working in junior highs with newcomer immigrant students. And even I was there sort of at the end of Biden into Trump too, and the change in what the teachers are faced with, how this is the first time in one classroom a kid and his family were sent to a detention facility in Texas, and the teacher didn't know how to respond when kids were saying, "I know he's there. What do we do about it?" And so these are sort of and they're allowing me in to be another adult in the room to support kids and work with kids, but also to try to flag for district leaders and even state. And so in talking, I keep thinking about, in some ways, I'm in a privileged position. Luanelly is, being in Connecticut, my home state. I'm in California, a very progressive state. And we can't forget about the power of state context and state law. So Attorney Bonta, the State Attorney General in California, has really been a leader in putting forth policies saying districts must have these procedures in place. I'm not going to tell you exactly. I'm going to give you guidance on what happens with ICE and how to protect people's data. And this is in California and New York similarly, but there are a lot of places where it's not the same. So being aware of the state contextual conditions, the day-to-day, it's so hard to be a teacher. And I'm just so grateful, but also want to be aware that we're asking so much of them. And we need to do much more to make people want to be teachers, to people like Luanelly to want to stay being teachers, but we can't just keep piling more on without providing them the support. So that's where I am now. Super grateful for the educators, but also really wanting to use my position of privilege to try to shine a light on what we need to do to help educators to better support kids and families.
Well, but got about 30 seconds here, Julie. What do you hope our listeners take away from this conversation today?
I think that we've heard some really powerful stories about the effect on individual families. And I think that thinking about, what this means as a society, what this means in terms of what we think of education, our values around education, the fact that the Plyler versus Doe case has been challenged in some places, that people really need to understand how important schools are, not just for individual kids developing, but for entire families and communities.
And Luanelly, got about 30 seconds here too. What do you hope to leave with our listeners today?
I really hope that people understand that education is the key to transform life, that our students are wonderful human beings with a lot of potential that needs the best support that we can offer them and bring them, so that they can have a brighter future and they can be productive citizens that can contribute to their communities. And I also hope that our government system understand that we need the funding, that we cannot do this job, because if we have the people but we don't have the funding, the challenge becomes even higher, and it becomes harder to really provide what we need to support our students and their family, because we all need to work as a team and we all need each other.
Well, thank you so much for that, Luanelly. You've been listening to Luanelly Iglesias, who's a bilingual teacher at Danbury Public Schools. Thank you so much, Luanelly.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
You're also listening to Julie Sugarman with the Immigration Integration Policy. Thank you so much, Julie, for being with us today as well.
Thank you.
And also Carolyn Satin-Bajaj, who's a professor of education policy at UCSB. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you all so much for listening.